Next question. The police kill about 1,000 people a year. In contrast, there are about 250,000 medical malpractice deaths per year. And people of color have high medical mortality. Should we start a movement to defund doctors? Yeah. I wonder, that 250,000 medical malpractice deaths seems high to me, but I'm sure it's more than 1,000. I'm sure it's more than the number of people killed by police every year.
Yeah, I have seen some of these iatrogenic harm numbers, and I don't remember the
They're
figure.
staggeringly
They
high.
are staggering, which, I think we have to be careful because you don't want the number to be zero, right? Because basically you have no medicine at that point.
Well, and just it's a harder thing to say, but I've actually heard, I think I've heard Sam Harris say this, right? Like, you don't want the number of people killed by police to be zero either, right? Because that's erring too far in the other direction.
Well,
and
that's
a thing that is basically impossible to say right now. But for any of these things where there's tragedy, there's individual human tragedy, reducing that to zero means that you will create a whole other kind of tragedy which doesn't yet exist in its wake.
Yeah, I think the easy way to see this is we could reduce highway deaths to zero easily with current technology, right? And there are really two ways to do it. Either you prevent all driving, or you set speed limits so low and set the requirements for vehicles so high that nobody could possibly injure anybody. If we're all driving a tank at 2 miles an hour, right, then you can get highway deaths pretty low pretty quick.
Yeah, sounds like a party.
It does not. And so the point is, we've all made this decision, right?
Yeah. We take risk.
Probably you don't go out and say, what is the safest possible car I could buy, right? You say, oh, that's a very safe car. And
new parents are more likely to veer in that direction, and this is why we have these stereotypes about what the kinds of cars that new parents buy.
But
right?
even then, you are much more likely to go to Consumer Reports and see, oh, this one gets a 5-star crash rating, rather than I want to know.
The gas economy, the mileage is terrible, and
right. But so lots of people will go with, I want a 5-star crash rating, but they won't go, if some car that has dismal this or that happens to be safer, they often will not buy it because we all calculate that, okay, this risk is sufficiently low that now some other parameter is more important. And, of course, there is an interaction. If you buy a car with cruddy mileage because it just so happens that it is the top, the safest car, well, then that's going to cost your family in terms of how much resource it has based on how much you're spending. And so that will have an interaction, potentially the quality of food you buy or something else. So, even if you're dealing with health as your top consideration, it's a complex equation.
Yeah.
But
the point, which is could be read as glib, is a good one, right?
Great.
For any of just to read it again, the police kill about 1,000 people a year. In contrast, there are about 250,000 medical malpractice deaths per year, and people of color have higher medical mortality. Should we start a movement to defund doctors? It's a perfectly analogized point. Pick anything where there are deaths that you don't want to happen. Find that there is disproportionate death in some demographic that has been historically underserved by a system, and argue that entire system should be defunded as a result, because the only possible reason, which is implicit here, the only possible reason that there could be disproportionate effects on an historically disadvantaged group is modern racism, systemic racism, or ism, whatever, misogyny, transphobia, fatphobia, whatever it is. Yeah,
it's a beautiful point. I would like it even just one step better if it was abolish rather than defund, because the real point is nobody, including those of us who are very focused on iatrogenic harm, nobody believes that medicine is inherently more harmful than it is beneficial. Right. It does lots of harm, lots of it unnecessary, and therefore preventable. But, the idea that abolish is the next step is a non sequitur, just as it is with the cops.